Yeah, it's doing very well so far, so it feels like a great pick from Swaroop, but we'll start off with Kareem. We've, like you said, seen this 6 quite a few times because it is just generally that good. There are some variations between the builds from player to player, and we can see some alterations here. There's no sword stance on the King Gambit going Iron Head. Sometimes we see the low kick there, but proving a valuable option. In the mirror in particular, it gives you a good option against the Floette here. And then the Basket Legion, we've seen a million times. You're going to be leveraging the Whimsicott in this match a lot to get that Charizard into a strong position to use those big, powerful fire type attacks boosted by the sun. You've got the Garchomp to also support that, and then that Floette is an alternative Mega with that instant burst damage if you need it.
And this is such a powerful team, but it's not going to be the first time for Kareem to be on a stage of this side. Of course, we talk about trainers being able to start off their Pokemon Champions era right, but in the past, he has been able to find those winning ways as well when you look back with what he's accomplished within the seniors division. I mean, we've gotten to see those runs, we've gotten to see those wins, including an NAIC title. So it's within the wheel kit. We've seen it before, and we could see it here again within the Masters. I'm getting ahead of myself, but you know, this is a great start to it. I'm so excited to see what he's capable of on this stage of an event with so many players. But on the opposing end, let's talk about Swaroop and this team, because I love this team. There is so many annoying, respectfully annoying pieces on it. Mimikyu is not something that we've gotten to see the most of within this regulation, but that disguise and just the coverage that it has, it can do so much damage, or the Trick Room to set up other Pokemon in this team, and I think that is so annoying to go up against.
Yeah, and I really like the setup options here Swaroop's got. You've got that Sword Stance on the Excadrill. Normally there you would see something like Rock Slide to give that kind of coverage against Charizard that are so prevalent, and especially if you're in the right conditions with that Sand Rush ability, take advantage of it with that Sash to give it a security blanket. But the Sword Stance makes it so dangerous once you get one of those off, and it helps mitigate the Intimidate as well. You've also got the setup on the Corviknight as well with that bulk up. Only one attack there as well, kind of foregoing Iron Head, saying, well, I've got it on my Excadrill, I don't need it there. The Brave Bird's great, and I can roost off any damage that I take. And then you've got Trick Room as an option on the Mimikyu, so that's nice to have with that Disguise ability, almost guaranteeing there with the Fairy Feather boosting that Play Rough. It isn't anything you need to scoff at, it will be hitting very hard. And I think that this Scarfed Rotom in particular, really nice for being able to get that speed control if the Trick Room isn't an option, so that Electro Web can lower the speed on things, put things like that Tyranitar, that Corviknight into better, more stronger positions, and then the Scovillain kind of rounding off the team as an alternative Mega, and does support those setup options pretty well as allowing room for maybe Mimikyu to get a Trick Room up in a key position, or just those bulk ups and Corviknight into a spot where it's just unstoppable going forward.
The dangerous thing with the setup Pokemon is sometimes you're not always allowed that time. So a lot of support on this team. We'll have to see if we go for the setup or some of the pure damage option as the team offers. 7-0 for both of these trainers. Time to see who could be ending off their Phase 1 undefeated as we get into the match. For Kareem, it's going to be Whimsicott next to that Floette. And for Swaroop, well, we get the Mimikyu right away with that Tyranitar.
Yeah, I like this position from Swaroop because you've got the option where in the face of Tailwind, you can say, well, you can go for that. I'm going to set up my Trick Room here and then put my Tyranitar into a really strong position, and then protecting Tyranitar here. You don't really worry about that on-call because if it's Dark typing, you're immune to the Prankster, so you've got the ability to do that here and then get yourself in that spot where you can then go for those big, powerful double-ups maybe with your Mimikyu. It's got that Fairy Feather that's, if we see the Floette Mega Evolve, it's going to have a Fairy Aura boost as well, so lots going for this turn if everything plays out, but Swaroop not wanting to commit there. Corviknight feels a little bit more stable.
Well, especially looking at the potential attacker on the opposing end, as Floette will go ahead and Mega Evolve, something that can resist that just a little bit better, or just make sure you can keep that disguise intact. It will be the Mega Evolution, that Fairy Aura to get the boost to the Fairy type attacks, and a Tyranitar that wants absolutely no part of that Protect on this turn. This allows the Whimsicott, we could have gone for a Tailwind, but instead we're just going for the damage. Corviknight, a good little dunker, all things considered, even though it's not very effective. Oh, thanks to that critical hit. And now we can see a follow-up. Floette, Light of Ruin. Corviknight coming out onto the field. Preventive Swap, it will survive, but that is a lot of damage.
That is huge damage when you consider how bulky Corviknight is, and these are resisted hits, just showing off the power of these fairy types, and a really nice switch there to preserve that Mimikyu, because that Moonblast breaking the disguise, the Light of Ruin would have undoubtedly knocked that Pokemon out, so kind of preserving things here. But are you any further forward in the match? I don't think so. The Corviknight feels like it's in a really awkward spot where even a Moonblast boosted by that Fairy Aura will take it down now, and then a Light of Ruin's got a free shot into the Tyranitar. And do you have the offensive capabilities to kind of get any further forward in the match with just your Mega Tyranitar? It maybe feels a little bit awkward for Swaroop now. Might want to try and adjust, or just let the Corviknight go down, try and get some damage onto the board, finally with the Tyranitar, and then try and get something next to it that can, maybe like that extra drill, it's going to get that Sand Rush boost to put it in a position to threaten these fairies.
I mean, Tyranitar, the fact that it protected on that last turn, I don't think anything could really safely swap into a barrage of hits here. So Tyranitar, that is a double KO. Such a commanding lead to this game one coming out from Kareem. Corviknight goes down, Tyranitar gone. Swaroop only with 2 Pokemon to try and make his way through this match. And you had already highlighted that a Moonblast and a Light of Ruin into Mimikyu could just take it down.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think if you've got the extra drill in the back, it does help out slightly, but you've lost your Pokemon that you want to be megaing in this matchup, right? And then we know that Charizard isn't coming here, so there won't be any way of disrupting this, but you've only got 3 turns of sand left, and is that enough to help you get around things? You've got 2 Pokemon in the back, and if one of those is the Garchomp, you can potentially set up your Tailwind with your Whimsicott and bring Garchomp in, but it is still dangerous to go for that sort of play. I think you need to remove that Mimikyu as soon as possible, so that play of going for the Moonblast, Light of Ruin into that Pokemon really makes things easier to close the game up.
Yeah, there definitely is some possibilities here. Just got to make sure that you're moving on carefully. I mean, the extra drill too, when you're like, it will be fast, and it does pack a punch.
It definitely packs a punch. It threatens a knockout onto the floor edge here, so you've got the option where you have to kind of Tailwind, right? Or just allow something to get knocked out here. But because that Mimikyu's got no Protect, the double up into it is kind of tempting to do, but you're so far ahead if you Kareem in this match. I think just getting damage onto the board, breaking the sash on this extra drill now, and getting rid of that disguise on the Mimikyu definitely helps out a lot.
So now, I mean, Whimsicott's down, but Whimsicott's kind of done what it's needed to do, and you can safely kind of bring something out on to the field. But we are getting a twist of the dimensions, though, so Trick Room's going to be something that's a little bit more useful for that Mimikyu going on forward, so really putting all the eggs in the Mimikyu basket.
Yeah, because it's not really that useful for the extra drill, and this scenario, you know, the extra drill with that Sand Rush ability doubles its speed in sand. You've still got 2 turns of sand to go, so it's really going to be a bit more of a hindrance to the Trick Room here rather than it being a benefit. And yeah, the Mimikyu's in a good spot where it can potentially get an attack off, pick up the knockout onto that floor edge, but now you've got the Basket Legion to come in, and now it is going to be in a spot where it can threaten big damage and knockout onto that extra drill, probably in Aqua Jet range as well, because it is boosted by that Mystic Water, and it doesn't really care about the field conditions. That's why we're seeing that Protect.
Yeah, knowing that it's not necessarily in the safest spot of Protect, but Basket Legion, no Aqua Jet's just going to target with that last Respects down into the Mimikyu. A Trick Room, everything kind of riding on the Mimikyu within this match, and it's now a non-factor. Only 1 Pokemon remaining over on the opposing end, and the Excadrill, Focus Sash broken in Trick Room is just not it.
No, you don't even need to consider the Aqua Jet when you've got Last Respect and you know you're slower than everything on the other side of the field. So the Basket Legion coming in at the perfect time, cleaning up, and Kareem taking game 1 in a very commanding style.
100%. I mean, it all started with that turn number 1, the amount of damage into that Corviknight when Tyranitar protected, and then we get into turn number 2 and we get a double KO and really quickly just running Swaroop out of options. I mean, there are so many different ways this team can play. There's so many strong Pokemon on it. We've praised so much Charizard, etc. But Floette and Whimsicott, those 2 did so much work.
So much work, and I think there's an emphasis here really on, you know, if you get your leads wrong in a match and you're on the back foot and you start trying to reposition your board against the threats that are of the nature of that Mega Floette and the Whimsicott with that Fairy Aura, even if you're resisting these attacks, you get punished so hard, and Swaroop just didn't get into a position where they were able to get any sort of handle back on board positioning. Even when the Excadrill came in, the kind of last-ditch attempt from the Mimikyu to flip the dimensions was really kind of one of those double-edged swords where, in one respect, yes, you kind of give the Mimikyu maybe a little bit of a boost, which actually didn't help out overall, but you kind of counterintuitively get rid of the advantage that the Excadrill had in that situation, which, yeah, really didn't give them a way back in. I think they've got to probably go with the Excadrill Tyranitar as a lead here to have that instant pressure.
Yeah, that's exactly it, that pressure, because, I mean, Kareem, I just don't really think at any point in that match felt any, right? Anything that Swaroop had, I mean, a double up would just KO it, right? You're kind of switching around, you're still taking 1,000,000 damage on that swap in. So if you really want to make use of the Excadrill, you need to have it in just a lot sooner. Things like that Iron Head, I mean, either of those Pokemon would necessarily appreciate it. Kareem could try and go heads up and kind of anticipate that, though. I mean, we didn't even get to see the full game plan coming out from Kareem, right? So we talk about the Excadrill, we talk about the sand, but it is something that I'm sure Kareem could have an answer to. So heading into this game, too, it's first off time to see, do we see an adjustment of these leads? Scoville and Mimikyu instead, though, so Sand, at least not on the lead. We get the spicy lizard pepper thing out instead.
Yeah, we do. The Scoville in a bit of a change-up. It gives a little bit extra support to the Mimikyu that was such a kind of easy target in that last game because of no Protect there. Now you've got the Rage Powder, but a great adjustment again here from Kareem with the Basket Legion. It is going to come in. Yes, you target into that, then there is a potential of picking up a knockout at the cost of getting burned, but is it worth it to get rid of the Mega again? I would suggest yes, you've got the play where you could possibly Dazzling Gleam Wave Crash. So Scoville not in an easy spot either, but Kareem looking like they don't want to get that burn just yet.
Instead, Preservation on the Basket Legion, a swap out. Whimsicott hits the field, and Mega Evolution once again for this Floette. It had so much impact in game number 1, and even something like Dazzling Gleam to, I mean, get around any sort of Rage Router and to be able to break that disguise would just be oh so useful. As of course, you see Scoville on the field, you'll see Mega there as well.
Yeah, you will. And now this is going to be, I would be interested to see what the Scoville does this turn. If it goes for, yeah, just the Rage Powder, just to protect that Mimikyu. And now this almost forces the Floette to go for that Dazzling Gleam to get around that. You will take a burn for your troubles, but the most important thing is you break that disguise for later on down the line when you're in a position where you can just go after that Mimikyu. And you could imagine the Mimikyu here. I mean, I would like to see it go for a play rough, but it might set up the Trick Room to put everything in a more favorable spot.
Yeah, disguise is broken, but Mimikyu, that will be the Trick Room. Definitely a lot better position for it this time around since you're slow, you're not next to a super speedy Excadrill, right? So now it's going to be what responses what and Whimsicott can have.
Yeah, and you've got to remember this Mimikyu does have the Fairy Aura boost now. So this Play Rough's boosted by its Fairy Feather will be doing a lot of damage. You've got the Scoville in as well that can potentially get the overheat onto the Whimsicott. And maybe the switch out here is because you don't want locked in with the Encore to that Trick Room, right?
But instead, Encore, so playing heads up, you don't want to be locked in, but it's going to be the Scoville that is locked in, so Rage Powder forcing the attacks again to go towards it. And when you're eyeing up again the Floette that using the Dazzling Gleam, it made so much sense on last turn, but now you're kind of just stuck. And that, I mean, a lot of damage with the critical hit. Corviknight does make its way onto the field fairly safely, haven't taken too much damage, but it still needs to do so much to make an impact here.
Yeah, that is a lot of damage. You know, I think the Corviknight gets onto the field now in way better position than it did in that game 1. Now it's threatening the Brave Bird. The Whimsicott does still have its sash, so it's got a little bit of security here, I think, against being knocked out. But the Floette in that position where it probably doesn't really want to take an unnecessary Brave Bird, but you can't give it too much room because it has got the access to bulk up, so you don't really want to allow it to get set up so it becomes a bit more of a threat when Trick Rooms expire.
I mean, Scoville, Rage Powder's normally a lot of help and a lot of fun, but kind of forced to switch out if you want to be doing any damage with this Pokemon. And on the same turn, eyeing up the Floette could be maybe targeted down a swap out into Kingambit, something definitely a lot better position to take something like a Brave Bird, as it instead tries to target down into the Whimsicott. So great protect, great switch coming on out. And Kingambit now hitting the field, I mean, that's a lot of pressure in the Mimikyu.
Yeah, and you've got to imagine the Kingambit is feeling pretty safe, right? It does have to worry slightly about the Play Rough, but it's not overly concerned about it. Doesn't worry about that Corviknight at all because it's only got the Brave Bird as an offensive attack. So taking no damage there, then it's going to be able to get at least a very strong attack off into this Mimikyu. In particular, it does carry Iron Head, and it will be slower into Trick Room, so that Mimikyu is not in a safe spot. And the Whimsicott now, it still has its sash. It can potentially stay on the field, but you could just switch it out as well to be in a better position going forward.
I mean, with the Mimikyu being pressured, a swap makes a lot of sense. And when you have this Scovillain in the back to maybe try and tank the hit instead, a great little switch up. But Encore will be going into the Corviknight, so we won't be seeing any roost, we won't be seeing any, setups. Instead, just going to be pure damage. And if it's going to be a Brave Bird targeting into that Whimsicott, that Kowtow Cleave did a lot. Whimsicott, it will go down to Focus Sash, but it's going to be notably sticking around in the Corviknight. That is going to be a lot of recoil coming on through. Not quite enough for the KO. But again, when you're eyeing up King Gambit with Sucker Punch.
Yeah, it's very close. And you would say now, I think one turn of Trick Room left, so you're probably safe here to just protect with your Whimsicott. You could switch back into maybe Basket Legion here. It's kind of risky in front of the Scovillain, of course. Or you could just use your King Gambit to attack, because I think a Kowtow Cleave is going to do decent damage, as you probably don't want it to get burned, and Rage Powder feels like the optimal play for Scovillain. Now it's back on the field in this scenario to allow Corviknight a little bit of room, but you do see the switch out. It's going to stick around for later as the Tyranitar comes out.
All right, Tyranitar comes on out. Sand is here. Scovillain goes down with help of that critical hit. So, of course, leaving a parting gift on the King Gambit of that burn. As one Pokemon goes down on the turn, Whimsicott, though, again, notably no Protect, will get a hit into this Tyranitar on the swap-in, and still a good amount of damage. At least, though, for the Whimsicott, the Sand is here. The Whimsicott does go down. Something at least gone from Kareem.
Yeah, it's a nice switch to Tyranitar there. I think getting the stand up so you can guarantee getting the knockout onto the Whimsicott. So when this Trick Room does expire, then Tailwind isn't an option for Kareem to use any longer. We know that the Floette is in the back. It comes out now. It's going to be in a real good position because now the disguise has been broken. We talked about this earlier, how important it was. The Floette in the position where it will be able to knock out that Mimikyu before it can set up a Trick Room. And then the King Gambit as well is in that spot where it can just go for the Iron Head, even burned. It's still going to be doing good damage onto that Tyranitar to just get it closer to the point of knocking it out, setting it up for maybe the Basket Legion to come in a little bit later on and close this one up.
I mean, yeah, looking at these Pokemon and the fact that, again, the Tyranitar took a good amount of damage on that swap-in, and the Mimikyu doesn't have the disguise, and I'm just looking at that pure power of the Floette here, the Trick Room being done. It kind of just seems like there's just going to be that out damage potential here. And Tyranitar, I mean, kind of just has to protect, but if you're thinking that Tyranitar is protecting, you can just target down into the other Pokemon. Moonblast brings it down to 12 HP. Play Rough, not enough to take down the Floette either. And Iron Head will follow up, take Mimikyu out of the equation.
Yeah, it's good targeting here from Kareem, just saying, if the Moonblast gets it, then the Iron Head will revert onto the Tyranitar, but if not, I'm covering just in case it does survive, and that's exactly what happens, preventing the potential Trick Room. Taking Play Rough in the meantime, but that does surprisingly a lot of damage. You can see the value of that Fairy Aura there, but things are slipping away slowly for Swaroop, and it just feels like the resources that Kareem's got left with the Basket Legion in the back, just a little bit too much at this stage with the Corviknight. Solo health. Floette going to be easily able to pick up a knockout there. The Corviknight, unfortunately, doesn't have a way to protect itself, so it's an easy Dazzling Gleam Iron Head play here, and it feels like it's a might keep the game locked up.
Yeah, I mean, a Pokemon KO, 2 Pokemon burned, but the Corviknight has not really much to it. Sucker Punch, though, attempt into the Corviknight will fail. A little indication of what it tried to go for, but the Dazzling Gleam is just more than enough for the double KO. And what a commanding set coming out from Kareem. I mean, that was just fantastically played. He has been an NAIC champion before within that seniors division, and he's going to be ending off phase 1 of the competition here today undefeated. What a victory coming out.
Yeah, flawless victory here from Kareem. What a showing in how to pilot this team against what on paper looks like a really tough matchup. I think, Sean, you know, you mentioned that they were previously a senior champion in the NIC at this event. So taking that experience, they know what it's like to be up in